Hey folks, it's Daniel Rashid. Thanks for tuning in again. It's a little bit of a windy day. Hopefully the audio comes out okay in this. We got a little bit of gray skies, but beautiful nonetheless. And we got to take it when we get it, especially on the East Coast. Going on the facts instead of the hype, and what that really means, especially when we're talking about investments. When we're getting into investing, we hear all sorts of stories about getting rich right away, and just people turning over properties and making $100,000 or six figures every property they turn over, and they're buying 50 a year and turning this stuff over. Just don't believe in the hype, And if you have somebody doing that kind of work in that kind of magnitude, there's probably a lot of hype associated with it. They probably have access to funds and resource that you may not. Don't believe in that kind of hype of what you know versus what you think you know. Let's say for the renters. So, for the renters, don't just assume that these renters are going to be there when you take over the property. Get the facts right. Know what you're dealing with. Get the leases and see how long they're going to be there. There's nothing like taking over a property and most of those tenants leaving the next day. It would just be really unfortunate for your bottom line, especially when you have turnovers happening, a few of them, that maybe might be a surprise to you. So know that they're staying. Don't just think it. Know the neighborhood you're buying in. Don't just think you know it. Look at the statistics. Get whatever information you can from your realtor. Hopefully they provide you good information. Otherwise, do your own due diligence. Check, I think East Coast, some Zillow stuff. There might be some stats on there. And worst comes to worst, check Kijiji and watch these ads come on and off. See where people are renting at and what kind of money they're making. Just know and observe via history sort of the growth potential of your investment or that location. Just think it. It's all about knowing. Do your due diligence and know, not think. Another thing is when you're purchasing, know what the city is going to do or if there's any plans on that property to begin with. If they're rezoning or if it's illegal conforming use, the property is a triplex that you're buying, if it is a triplex legally, that's important to know before you're buying. So know that. Don't just assume from the listing cut or the person selling that property is what it is. Find out what's going on, and then find out what the city's doing around that area. Is there any major projects planned that might hinder your rental potential or return on investment? There's not too many situations that development will hurt you, but there could be, and just check into it and see if it's gonna jive with you, see if it will jive with that investment. Are we gonna be looking at maybe they're moving the school that you're buying? Let's say you're buying a property right next to a nice college or school or hospital or detachment of some kind that there's a lot of workers, and maybe they're moving the whole industrial park to a different district, and all of a sudden you have these multi-units sitting in the middle of a deserted sort of an industrial field, no workers to, rent from you, or your source of income that you're thinking you're relying on is not going to be evident anymore. So be careful with that. Do your research. This tip, I cannot stress enough. Make sure the income is what it is. Make sure the expenses are what they are. Get as close as possible to what they are. Don't just assume that the property's taxes are going to be the way they are. Some of these properties haven't sold for 20 years, haven't been reassessed in 20 years. Right when you purchase that property, your tax could double, triple, quadruple. It can happen easily. Province knows that the property's changing hand. They'll do a reassessment. It's very windy. Hopefully everyone's hearing me. So, I think we're cool. I'm gonna get a wind mic soon. Anyways, the province or state, I'm sure it works all the same, all around. Real estate generally has the same rules and practices. If the property that you're buying is going to get reassessed, you're gonna get dinged with a ton more property tax. You don't want that, or at least prepare for what those numbers could be. Get the consumption reports right from the oil provider or the electrical provider or the propane or gas provider. Sometimes you have natural gas, whatever the case may be. Get the source receipts of the annual expenditures, or 2 years, 3 years if you can. The more the better. Some vendors may hem and haw over this. They don't want to provide it to you. Some realtors, oh, it's extra work. I don't want to provide that to you. It's extra work on me, whatever. Just take it for what it is. Don't. Know your numbers. Don't just think you know it. Know your numbers. It's super important that you take the time to evaluate those numbers on the property and make sure it is what it is. So when you assume the property, all of a sudden, did they count both oil tanks? Maybe they had 2 oil tanks, so they're only giving you the cost of the 1 oil tank. You know what I mean? There's a lot of ways to improve the numbers on a property or make it more appealing to a buyer. But don't just walk in blindly. Do your due diligence. Be smart about it. If you have questions, just ask questions. If you're unsure, then ask a professional. Find out. You're talking a lot of money. And then if you're $6,000 thinking that you're $6,000 up every year, and all of a sudden it goes out of the window through, let's just use that oil tank for example. It goes out of the window for that extra oil tank you didn't account for, and then burning out expenses. You might be in store for some trouble, or holding on to a property that's breaking even, and it's which is not a bad thing. Breaking even is not a bad thing, but you could have been ahead every year rather than behind. Be smart about it. Know about it. Don't think it. Know that the deal is
Finally,
legit.
just remember
the person that's selling that
property
it's about is the person that should be
like
representing
facts,
it, or that
not
agent
just
is
hopes
a authorized
and
agent.
dreams. You got to be smart about how you approach
It's
things.
a especially the real estate world is a sales-driven business.
Look at the location.
A lot of these
market,
agents are
neighborhoods
hungry,
that you're
just like
buying
anyone
in.
else working.
See the rents that
in
you're
terms
buying.
of sales. So find out if there's any projects coming in,
You need
or
to push
if there's
that
any major
aside.
changes
and
to
hopefully
those
you have
areas.
somebody that you trust that you're
Just
working
be smart
with. If you
about
don't,
your approach.
then just evaluate
Verify
that
your rents.
person that you're
Verify
working
your
with.
expenses.
Verify your
Make
income.
sure everything is happening
You'll
that is
never lose
legitimate.
if you take the
Make
time.
sure you
And
know
I mean,
your
it's a
rules
short
with your
amount of
local
time. It's
rental
not
board,
really anything
as
at
well
the
as
end
your
of the day.
municipality.
Same with
Make
property
sure
ownership.
your
It's not
lawyer
anything
jumps
at
on
the
top
end
of
of the
that
day.
title.
You take your due
Find out
diligence up
everything
front,
that you need to know
you're gonna
about
be
the
ahead.
property. That there's no liens or
That's it for
construction
today.
liens against the property.
I have nothing else to give
Don't
you.
walk in blindly. Don't make that mistake.
Thanks for tuning in.
Put
Take
those
care. If you have
conditions
any
in to
questions,
protect
let me
you.
know. Like and subscribe.
Research
Build
that
my
title,
channel.
which is
Let me
usually a
help more
buyer's condition
people.
on a
I
purchase
need
and
you.
sale.
Take care.
Home inspection, financing, home insurance. Don't just assume that you can get insurance. Perhaps the oil tank's expired, the siding on the home is asbestos, the interior, insulation's asbestos, and you got to replace it. The floors could be asbestos. Doesn't happen too much these days, but you're walking into a property. Why not? We got old properties everywhere with all sorts of different construction material that's prohibited, that should be changed. Be smart about it. Again, know what you're getting into. Protect yourself. Don't just think it.